Imagine every cargo truck, shipping container, and freight train on Earth being forced to use a single privately owned toll road. To move your goods, you have to pay their fee, follow their rules, and hope they never decide to close the gate on you. That toll road actually exists. In 1944, delegates from around the world gathered to rebuild the global economy, cementing the US dollar as the mandatory route for international trade. For decades, almost every cross-border transaction has been priced and settled in one currency. Because every country needs dollars to buy essentials like oil or electronics, there is a constant built-in global demand for American currency. Economists call this exorbitant privilege. It allows the United States to borrow money cheaper than anyone else and run massive trade deficits year after year, simply because the rest of the world is forced to absorb those dollars. But the real power of owning the highway isn't the toll money. It is the ability to decide who gets to drive. The United States can use access to this dollar network as a geopolitical weapon, freezing assets or entirely cutting off a country's ability to trade with the outside world. For 80 years, participating in the global economy meant accepting this absolute financial leverage held by Washington. There was simply no other road to take. The breaking point arrived in the spring of 2022. Following the invasion of Ukraine, Western nations executed a financial maneuver rarely seen on this scale. They froze over $300 billion of Russia's foreign exchange reserves. Decades of accumulated national wealth were locked away with a single administrative decision. Other economic powers were watching closely. Leaders in China, India, and Saudi Arabia realized that if a G20 nation with a massive nuclear arsenal could have its national savings wiped out overnight, no one was safe. Their sovereign wealth was only theirs as long as they stayed in Washington's good graces. Finding a backup plan was no longer a topic for slow diplomatic summits. It became an urgent, top priority national security mandate. These nations urgently needed a system where their reserves could not be frozen or sanctioned by external forces. The developing world absorbed a brutal lesson. If you do not control the financial infrastructure holding your money, eventually that very infrastructure will be used to control you. That urgency materialized in January 2026. The BRICS alliance, along with new members like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Egypt, flipped the switch on a completely independent cross-border payment network. They call it the Unit, and it allows these nations to conduct massive trade deals without touching a single US dollar. The immediate hurdle for any new currency is trust. Sovereign nations will not risk billions on a brand new, unproven digital asset. To solve this, the architects of the Unit divided its value into two distinct mathematical pillars. This 40% is composed of actual gold bullion, audited and stored within the vaults of member nations, to anchor the system in a commodity with 5,000 years of history. This physical metal provides the foundation of trust required for international trade. The remaining 60% handles growth. This portion is backed by a carefully weighted basket of the member nations' own currencies: the Chinese yuan, the Indian rupee, the Russian ruble, the Brazilian real, and the South African rand. This hybrid structure creates a financial shield. It offers the ancient, reliable security of gold, combined with the massive industrial output, natural resources, and economic momentum of the developing world. Most alternative currencies fail because they have to build an audience from scratch. The Unit launched with a built-in user base encompassing 46% of the entire human population. That is over 3.6 billion people ready to participate on day one. This network is backed by a combined gross domestic product exceeding $28 trillion. More importantly, these participating nations hold absolute control over the critical resources the modern world needs to function, from crude oil and natural gas to agricultural staples and rare earth metals. We also know the mechanics work in the real world. In the years leading up to this launch, Russia and China were already settling 90% of their hundreds of billions in bilateral trade directly in rubles and yuan. They built the detour, tested it, and proved large-scale commerce survives without the dollar. As this new system processes trillions in global trade, it creates a massive structural requirement for physical gold to back that 40% pillar. Financial institutions are projecting severe supply squeezes, forecasting gold prices doubling or even tripling as central banks scramble to secure the required metal. When you combine the immense population scale, the lock on natural resources, and an aggressively expanding gold reserve, the unit steps out of the realm of economic theory. It becomes an immediate, structural rival to the reigning financial order. The arrival of the unit does not mean the US dollar will vanish next week, nor will it instantly trigger hyperinflation across America. The Federal Reserve and the Western banking system still hold immense structural power. What America actually faces is a slow, methodical erosion. Every time a cargo ship of Brazilian soybeans is sold to China using the unit, the global demand for dollars drops just a fraction of a percent. Over time, that steady decline slowly strips away the borrowing power and economic advantages the US has enjoyed for generations. It also gives developing nations a tool they have rarely had: leverage. If Washington threatens a country with financial sanctions, that country can now legitimately point to a functioning alternative payment network. Just having the option to walk away completely changes the dynamics of global diplomacy. The greatest threat to this new system actually comes from within. Maintaining a unified currency requires deep political coordination. The BRICS alliance includes nations with long-standing border disputes, like India and China, and vastly different governing models. In a crisis, they will have to prove they are willing to bail each other out. Even with those internal friction points, the global financial landscape has been permanently fractured. For the first time in 80 years, the global financial system has a legitimate second option, signaling the transition into a more complex, multipolar reality.